So, I go. I go. Yeah.
All right.
You can start.
So, welcome everyone to morning meditation. And so, let's start today with self-inquiry. So, just to go over the basic instruction of self-inquiry one more time, right? And by the way, I should say, for these sessions, these morning meditation sessions, and also for any of the evening sessions, though I'm designating specific periods of practice, you should feel free to practice the entire time. That's always, my words are honestly less important than any practice you can do. So just keep that in mind. Um, so let's try self-inquiry together. Just one more time, the instruction, the basic fundamental instruction is, you know that you exist, you know that you are aware, and the job is, where is that knowledge coming from? Where is I coming from? It's very simple, really, and every time your mind goes somewhere in response to that question, you ask yourself, are you aware of that thing? You are, but you inevitably are. It can't be that. So you continue to search, right? Because you are aware of whatever that is. So keep moving towards I. So let's do that for 5 minutes and then we can discuss. All right. So one thing I want to note before I ask for people's experiences is any of these practices, in addition to being uh, very useful spiritually, will also educate you as to what many of your attachments are, because what thoughts are arising in your mind as you're trying to do the practice. Those thoughts are interesting. You note them down. Those are telling you where your mind is going. What's it could be trivia. It could be seemingly trivial, but often those trivial things are connected to other things which are of more profound concern. Things that you care about, things that you want, things that you fear, things like that. So
And these attachments vary though, right? Based on what's happening, the thoughts come. Today's thoughts.
yes, yeah,
What are the events, current events will trigger thoughts?
sure, yeah, definitely. They can 100% vary based on the environment and stuff like that. But nevertheless, usually there are going to be themes and certain things that will recur again and again. So that's worth noting. Anyone want to discuss what it was like just for those few minutes? Where your mind went in terms of I, where I is, where did you find I to be?
Yeah, I'll share.
Please, yeah.
I'm finding the more I do the practice, the more like I see the subtlety of the concepts mistaken as I.
Mhm.
So, but for me at least, there's often like a visual of a face or like this sense of this feeling of mindfulness.
Mhm.
And it gets more and more subtle, but also a bit more ephemeral, and it's a bit shadowy and
Mhm.
changes. But there often is this, it's super subtle. So even to say it's visual is a bit of a stretch, but it's like a visual representation of Michael that's kind of always lurking, like
In and through things.
yeah,
Mhm.
like in the idea of sitting, it's like in Michael image, it's thinking that's me, it's feeling that like I'm that. So that becomes more and more kind of objectified in the process and seen more and more clearly. Whereas before I was clearly just acting from that filter versus seeing the filter. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think it's very interesting you put it that way. Like it's because the mind is always going to constantly try to see, and as it tries to see, it will come up with these interesting metaphors, images, for what exactly it is that it's seeing, like sort of image of mindfulness, like the thinking, like a facial image, like you said.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, what we're hunting, ironically, is something which is faceless.
Yeah. That which knows that.
That which knows that precisely, which is again we're hunting it, but we're hunting it again just through the framework of our mundane, ordinary eye experience. But it is profoundly ironic that it is so here and also so invisible simultaneously, both continuously experienced and um, impervious to description at the same time. But yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Or to see the feeling.
Well, exactly. That's what the mind is trying to do, precisely. So, in the attempt to see the feeling, all those other things come out essentially, and what eventually recognized is, well, it's interesting because there is, you know, you you'll see eventually a reflection of the feeling is what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
So it goes to current problem to way deeper when you may not even thought that you wanted that, some kind of like unconsciously you might
Yes.
have admired something.
Yes.
That also comes.
Yes. Exactly. Long ago memories might come up, annoyances from yesterday might come up. That's right.
Would you agree that it seems that we often like day to day live like everything's interpreted through this filter of
Yes,
yeah.
definitely. I mean, yeah. So the mind is an instrument. I mean, you get day-to-day reality only through the filter of the mind, of course. And at the heart of the mind is this I thought. This I thought, which is a reflection of the self. That I thought attaches itself to other things, but essentially you have an initial kind of split. There's a split because when the mind says I as its first thought, upon waking, essentially, um, it's not the I of the self, it's the I that's opposed to objects. So it's the I which also says not I. I'm in here, and then this stuff is not me, basically. So that filter then creates the basis for ordinary experience, waking experience, basically. And then and then a whole bunch of other things. Instruments are coming into play, like the koshas, they would say Vedanta, right? All the mind, the intellect, memory, all of these other layered psychological organs are coming into play. But it's starting with essentially this initial split, which is why, right, when that's ultimately why, if that split is penetrated, right, in some sense, then you have to go beyond words, basically, because words, the condition for language meaning anything is that there's initial division. It's because you have an initial division of I and not I that you can speak, and think. All of these things are within the realm of this, but this initial cut is not real. So that in the experience of the unreality of that, language loses meaning. That's what's happening. So this is why it's all, it's all very, it's all like, everything is, conditioned on a false assumption, right? It's like saying, like, if the moon was made of green cheese, then all these other things would follow. But the moon is not made of green cheese. So we're living in that world where we assume that, 1 equals, 2 or something like that, but 1 does not equal 2. So it's a hypothetical world. We're living in a hypothetical world. That's what it is. We're living in a virtual world, basically. Very strange.
That's a question.
Yeah.
That's a nice way of putting it. Right.
Akilesh, I have a question regarding the same thing. So you are saying whatever it is, hypothetical world, most of the time we are lost in that. See, whenever you come here during this Feb or this time, when we do practice, listen to you, my question is more about not today's practice, but it is in general, whole year, the practice of doing this self-inquiry or surrender. For some time that motivation I'm able to keep, but after some time again, more identification with this hypothetical world. I'm with the person, whoever is the Sri Devi, I'm more involved in that. And the problems that I come across in my personal life, sometimes they dominate so much. It is very hard. Like yesterday, Usha was mentioning, when I'm at home, I'm so much like getting buried into this role of Sri Devi, which is my challenge right now to get separated from that and continue this practice. Can you suggest any tools for continuing this practice for throughout the year?
Yeah, of course, it should be throughout the year and should be even throughout the day, right? The answer is really going to be specific on a person-to-person basis, right? So, for example, yesterday we talked about, how retreats really help her, and for some people that will be helpful, right? To build in separate time, I've talked to many people for whom a morning practice can be extremely helpful, right? And it also depends on the exact structure of what is, really depends on the exact structure of what exactly is distracting you and why, So again, this is what, to harp on this, and I will keep harping on it, right? The importance of something like therapy or something like that, good therapy, because many times these attachments are buried in the unconscious. So, being driven by forces that we don't understand, essentially. So that's another factor, right? So, I can give you a whole bunch of possibilities, right? So, for example, right, fundamentally, I can say it, will it be done? See, the problem is, if there's, to the extent that inner conflicts are there, I can give you a lot of suggestions, they won't be carried out. But anyway, for example, right, like immerse yourself in consistent reading of either the scriptures or Ramana Maharishi or some kind of spiritual text, or listening to this stuff, right? The more you expose yourself, even very passively, right? Like put a YouTube video on of Maharishi's works or something like that, right? Then you keep hearing about it, and then that keeps sparking the interest. Because you have to keep listening to it, thinking about it, thinking about it, right? And then like
Yeah.
that incites your interest, basically. So
Yeah.
those are some
Yeah.
possibilities, I would say. But
Hey,
Okay.
you
Kalish,
should know, right, what exactly, like it's all, yeah, there's a whole range of possibilities.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
can try some of those easier things first, and then if they aren't working, then clearly the problem is going
Yeah.
to be more emotional and psychological, which honestly it is
Okay.
for most people. But just to
Yeah.
let you know,
Mm.
Kalish, can I ask a
yeah,
follow-up to that?
sure.
And thank you. You do great work, and I always enjoy checking in with
This is
you once a year.
Francis.
Yes, nice job. But I think this integration, Jung tried to speak of it. Every psychologist has tried to really speak about that last question. I know the question came up last night, so I have realized, I've stayed in the world, even though I know it's not absolute reality, and and yet, but my mind is constantly being filtered with emails, right, to this role as my job, managing director, and then you have this other role as a father.
Mhm.
So Ramana left his family, right? He went to he went to Ruvanamali and went to Arunachala, and he didn't even acknowledge his mother at
Mhm.
first, right? And then finally, his mother became a devotee. Quite different than Jesus, who I'm very, I have a few different gurus, but Jesus' family thought he was crazy,
Mhm.
right? They knocked on his, they were trying to get him to come home.
Yeah.
So, being in the world, and I'm starting to really look at it now, and I'm saying, it's almost as if, the reason why the anger and frustration comes out is because I know there's the peace beyond understanding. I
Mhm.
know, like the self, the divine knows, the reality within us knows. Like Rumi said, our mind and our body are the prison bars, and the spirit is, yearning to be free.
Mhm.
We're basically, and it's suffering, because I desire, like Buddha said, desire is what causes suffering, and we desire to be in the world, to be these roles. And I'm really kind of looking at it, and I'm saying, I think, even though Ramana said stay and do what you're supposed to do, fetch water and cut wood, and I'm just wondering if it's possible, when you have to have your mind taken by an email, taken by a phone call, taken by
Well,
your family,
see,
you know?
but I disagree with that premise. You see, so when you're in the world, you see, what makes it difficult is precisely this idea that you have to devote your attention to it. The reality is, right, and Ramana would agree with this, is if you're in the world, if you focus your attention on inquiry or surrender, whatever needs to be done will be done. Now, you may not agree with what that list is, but the body and the mind are fully capable of functioning in whatever way they're going to function. Now, see, the misconception is I I have to put my attention on the thing. Otherwise, it's not going to get accomplished. But the reality is, you're not in control of that fact of whether something gets accomplished or not, fundamentally. So when you're in the world, what you can be in the world per Ramana's instructions if one is immersed in the practice. If one is immersed in the practice, it's as much as being in a cave. You see that? Because you're treating this world as if it were nothing. You see, you're not taking onto yourself this idea that I have these duties, I have these responsibilities, I must fulfill them. You can't look, you can take that approach. That's a karma yoga approach, which for a lot of people will be necessary for quite a while because it's too scary to directly question it, right? There's not enough faith, not enough trust to directly question. But basically, if one is in the practice, see, it's said in many places in the scriptures in different ways, that one who hey, these are just metaphors, but the one who's immersed in the practice of God and the self, they will go about their duties whatever those duties may be, like a baby half asleep. So something will work to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. Actually, it'll probably be accomplished better than you accomplish it. But when you think you're the one doing it is a reality, because that's delusion. That's what Ramana says. So, so that's what I would say to that.
It's almost as if the karma keeps popping up. Even it's
Sure.
almost like
Yes.
this too has to be thrown into the fire. This too, in other words, you have a child that now has, a 30-year-old daughter that's being, manipulated by a bad person, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like, are you kidding me, Lord?
Well, yes, karma will arise. Karma does have to be worked through, and you're absolutely right. These karmas will arise if they need to be worked through in that way. But my suggestion is, right, if you can, you should consider just pouring your anxieties about it into the practice, because the idea that I have to deal with this child's problems, that I have to do it, is questionable. That's what inquiry questions. Who exactly is it that thinks that they have a child?
Thank you.
That's what it comes down to.
Akilesh, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, so for me, I've noticed that self-inquiry, it's very synchronized with the way my attachments are organized in the world. So if I'm in a lecture, the moment I step out of the building of lecture, self-inquiry hits me that, oh my God, I forgot about it. And or sometimes when I'm having a conversation with someone, even if it's for like 1 hour, at the very end of the conversation, the moment the conversation ends, it hits me, oh my God, I didn't do self-inquiry. Or or many instances when I don't have specific like intentional uh, control, or I don't think about what I'm doing, like walking or just eating, or things that I do in a way a little bit mindlessly, cycling, walking. In that time, self-inquiry is very strong. And I noticed that the most difficult time for me to do it is specifically when there's some intellectual activity involved, like doing some calculation or trying to learn a new subject. And what I found interesting is that even before I got into spirituality many years ago, I had this paradoxical observation I made about myself that um, when even if I don't have conscious thought about what calculation I am doing, the calculation is going on by itself. And only when my conscious mind interferes and it's like, it doesn't have faith. It's like, oh, how is this calculation going on? Then I fall.
Right.
When I
It's
don't
actually going
really look at
unconsciously. Right.
yeah, when I don't
Yeah.
look at it, it seems to be going smoothly. So I think the faith that I lack is that um, how can like I don't
Well,
have
what I
faith
would
in my
say is
intellect.
this: you're completely right. Right. So see, fundamentally, the thing is, I would just emphasize, right? Look, you're seeing clearly. I think you have the point, which is you lack, you and others, everybody, right? It lacks the faith that certain things will happen if they take their attention off the practice. But what I would say that the bigger point is really, if what you're trying to do the practice continuously, you have to essentially give up, quote unquote, the desire to control what outcomes happen. So
Yes.
so you can't say like, oh, this calculation has to be calculated.
Yeah.
You see, so that's why I always don't like the language of like do the practice. Why? I mean, even though I say it sometimes myself, but while I'm doing something else, because that implies that I'm going to decide to do X, and then I'm going to do the practice simultaneously, side by side thing. I mean, it's better than nothing, but preferable to say I do the practice, and then whatever happens, happens. Exactly. So if I happen to be cooking, if I happen to be calculating, if I happen to be doing something else, but because I'm questioning, right? If I'm doing inquiry, I'm questioning, like, who is it that thinks that they have to do this task? Who is it that thinks they can do this task, right? In fact, at all, right? That's what I would say. Right? So if in the back of your mind you're like, I have to calculate this, I have to do this homework or whatever it is, right? That's an attachment that's going to interfere, when in fact that's a thought, right, about who you are that ought to be fed into this question of the practice.
Yeah, and I just want to add, can I just say?
So, one second. I'll come back to you in a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Well, which is primary? So if you're doing something that becomes a top of the primary action, and the secondary action is the inquiry.
Yeah.
Or which is if
Oh, inquiry is primary.
primary action.
Inquiry is primary. Yes,
the question,
of course.
yeah.
That
My
should be.
point is that subconsciously you'll be doing it, then it's easier to pursue. If you flip it, then you may not do the work as remember we talked about the mortgage, everything.
Yes.
Somehow is going to do it, but the faith is not there. I see what's
Exactly. I mean, that's of course. See, that's the yeah. I mean, look. So, is it better to do it in the background than not at all, or yes, of course. So it's just it's simply it's not they're not going to have the same bite though.
Yeah.
Because that's what inquiry is asking you. Like,
Yeah.
are you the person who pays the mortgage? Like, is that really you? Like, it can't unless you directly paralyze the faculty of decision making, right? By asking, like, who is it that thinks, where am I in the situation, right? There's an assumption I'm the decision maker. It feels so obvious, so indisputable. Of course, I make decisions, right? That's what it's attacking at the heart, and of course, yeah, exactly. There's a lacking faith, of course, because one feels that when the decision, it's like you're crossing, some narrow bridge or something like that, where you could fall, easily, and you feel like I have to pay attention, otherwise I'm going to fall off.
Yeah.
When in fact, inquiry is saying, no, you're not on the bridge at all.
Yeah.
So you wanted to ask something else?
Yes, I think one similar point with apart from controlling actions is that when I do a lot of inquiry, I don't even get a lot of verbal thought or any conscious, like meaningful images or like language-based thought. So there's this aspect of me that not only wants to control but wants to see what's going on or have an acknowledgement that I'm thinking this or I'm walking or I'm calculating or while calculating having the numbers in my head, like even those don't arise. So it's not merely like I don't want not controlling, but not even seeing, like I'm completely blind in a way, like my ego is completely blind to what my actions should be doing or what my actions are. And that's um, I just want to mention that as like a side corollary because yeah, I found that was a
Practice
bit
doing
dark.
it's fine. That's you'll see these kinds of phenomena can change, right? So it may seem like that's the moment now, maybe in the future won't be like that, The key point is keep your eye on the ball, which is the eye, you know.
Yes.
And there's all these other mental sort of things that can happen, in reaction. But those are all essentially to be disregarded because those things can change
Yeah.
essentially. The feeling of the mind exactly as when there's a practice will change.
Yeah.
And all kinds of like side phenomena can occur.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, let's do another 5 minutes of practice.
Are you recording? Because I don't remember hearing the recording.
It's fun.
Oh, okay, cool.
Recording, so yeah.
Okay, let me hear the name.
All right, so let's do 5 minutes of practice together. All right. So I'm going to share a couple of analogies that I think will also be relevant. One is, one way of looking at what inquiry and surrender both really are aiming at is that you could view it. This is just a metaphor, but you can view it really as there are at least two faculties of knowing in the mind. The normal faculty of knowing is knowing that something is the case. So you know something as an object, basically. Knowing something as separate from you. And this is basically the main faculty of knowing which you use for everything. This is what almost synonymous with the mind, basically. But the idea is that underlying that, or simultaneous with that, is another kind of knowing. But this is a knowing without a that. It's not a knowing that something is the case. It's just a knowing without a that attached. So an objectless knowing. The objectless knowing is required for the first kind of knowing to, I just talked about. The objective knowing requires the non-objective knowing to function. But the non-objective knowing is so subtle that it is almost unseeable if the objective kind of knowing is operating at the same time, basically. So we're trying to turn this objective knowing into a point of stillness with inquiry and have it reflect essentially the non-objective knowing.
The force you're talking about,
Sorry?
is that the force and the energy which is around you, which makes you do things.
Well, the non-objective knowing is it's that's interesting. I mean, I guess you could view it as energy in a way. But I really just mean that there is, the basic isness, that's there.
So
Is,
you feel like when the mind is quiet, you can feel the energy or feel the what do you call it, the shakti.
yeah. Well, that's yeah. You could say that's a sort of reflection of things. Yeah. I mean, it's a little subtler even than energy, really, because it's awareness.
Is the feeling the energy?
I mean, any feeling you could argue has an energy component to it.
Okay.
If that makes sense. But what we're trying to do essentially is,
So
if you still in a way anything which you can identify as a feeling means that the objective knowing is still working.
perform comparison to the electricity.
Yeah. That's right. No, that's right. I mean, if you sure.
Right.
Sure.
So wouldn't this be the knowingness of that energy as well that we are looking at? There is a knowingness that, there's an energy, right? That's what we need to point ourselves to, wouldn't it? Not the energy itself.
There's
inconsequential, right?
If you search for I,
So something knows that there's energy, so that's important.
I would say it's closer to really what's happening is, you're coming to a point of stillness, essentially, right? So that stillness is, as you approach the stillness, you're going to get these flashes, right? And they can feel different, right? Like energies of various kinds.
That's an objective experience.
Exactly. So, but now at the very heart of things, there's going to be something which you cannot classify as either objective or subjective. That's the thing, right? Because realization straddles the boundary between the two. Right? That's why it's realization, right? Because it's an objective experience in the sense that it's something that seemingly wasn't there before and then comes. But it's a non-objective experience in the sense that the mind stops at that point. So
this energy also, you cannot feel it until the mind is quiet. You don't even know that the energy is there.
Yeah, sure. If you can call it that, then yes. But it's sure.
But there's an I that senses that energy too.
Yeah, without knowing the stillness itself, energy can come, right?
So
It's still not that.
Yeah, energy is there. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever is running things is running things.
Right.
But the question is, can you get a sense of it, right? There is something other than the way. My main point is that there's a way of knowing which does not require a boundary. Basically,
Yeah.
the knowing. Usually, when we say know, we mean we know something in a bounded way, as having certain qualities, basically. That's what it means to know something. It has dimensions, it has certain qualities, it's limited in time and space, or it's an idea which has certain, pieces to it, basically. It's an image,
So
words, it's a concept, it's memory, it's an emotion, right? These are all things which have certain qualities to them. That's what makes them.
Describe. You can't say, you
So
don't know what to
can-
describe.
Well, the thing which is beneath it, the thing which does not have those things, which is knowing without that. You see, so it's that the non-objective knowing was operating even in sleep. It's just but this base layer,
Yeah.
the base layer, and then there's the secondary layer which we take to be everything, which is the objective knowing. It's on top of it, and it's merged like this, basically. So you have to strip away the second layer essentially, so you can see this. And it could be energy. You can do it as energy, sure. Why not?
It's spontaneous.
can we say it is, sorry,
Spontaneous
can
too,
we
right?
say it?
It is spontaneous.
Yeah, it is spontaneous. You don't really try or anything. Something can trigger, but it's spontaneous.
Well, you mean realization of some kind?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, see, as you do the practice,
Yeah.
you will,
Yeah, it's spontaneous.
you'll alight upon these
Yeah.
glimpses. But the practice is healthy. The practice is basically weakening the obstacles to it, is what's happening. See, there's inner obstacles to these realizations because the part of oneself that identifies as the mind is lacking in trust, basically. So it fears the outcome of letting go completely.
Yeah.
So
Akilesh, can we say it is, sorry, can we say that the difference between this objective awareness and non-objective awareness is the awareness without any boundaries of the space, time, and whatever it is? Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Can
exactly.
we say that? Okay.
It's there.
Is it,
It's there. So that awareness is operating. It's just that what it is because it itself is not an object, the objective mind cannot see it. The objective mind is operating right on top of it. It just can't. Because it can only see that which is within a certain compass. That's what it means to see objectively. So it can't see it, even though it's literally standing on top of it. It's there. That other knowing is there. It's just that how do we know that other knowing? We can't see it because we're looking through the objective scope all the time. We're looking through a telescope and we're looking for the person who's looking through the telescope, right? We're looking through the telescope for the person who's looking through the telescope. You see? So the inquiry is saying, well, where is the viewer coming from? Right? And you're going backward to the telescope, and eventually it's going to be like, oh my God, there's a person on one end of this telescope. This person is not viewable through the telescope. This person is knowable in some other way. You see, the feeling in this particular metaphor, right? The feeling of being a body, let's say, okay, is mixed with what is seen through the telescope. When you're looking at the stars or whatever it is, right? There's the feeling of being a body looking through the scope. That's subtly mixed with everything that's seen through the telescope. So this is the same with the mind. The objective mind, every object that you see is mixed with the non-objective knowing of the self, basically. But you can't see it because it's equally mixed. It's like like a water or air or something like that, which is equally mixed with everything. So how do you see that? Well, you have to systematically separate out, cut away all the objective knowings as much as you can. And then, well, what's left? What's left? What's left? This is what inquiry is doing. What's left? What remains if you cut out all the objective stuff? What's there, right? And then that you come to it that way.
And the non-objective knowing is just another word for Brahman.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Another word for Brahman, another word for
It cannot be seen though, it only can be felt, right?
You can call it, of course. I mean, feeling is a kind of seeing, Yeah, exactly.
So in this
is
metaphor,
it also a
Akilesh,
sense of existence or presence? Is that the essence of existence or presence?
The existence of the present? The existence of the present
No.
of
Sorry,
presence?
a sense of presence, of
A
being.
sense of presence is a feeling, right? So it's in the right direction for sure. but then the immediate question of inquiry has to be who's feeling this presence. You see what I'm saying?
So Akilesh is thoughtless,
Go ahead.
wordless awareness, right? Without language.
Yes.
So suppose I can look at the table without language.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be?
Yeah, because so when you look at a table, there may not be any specific words, but the very fact that you're looking at a table, there's ideas completely suffusing that. When we see anything, okay, as soon as we say we see it.
Yeah, but ideas are again language. If suppose I suppress language.
Well, suppose you press it doesn't matter.
Just stare it emptily.
It doesn't matter because when you stare emptily at it, it's still you're employing the tools of cognition. So when you see a table, there are already massive structures that are operating that allow you to see the table. They're all beneath awareness, and they construct like the fact that you see certain colors, the fact that you see certain shapes. They're all based on like the biology of your eye and all kinds of mental factors. Doesn't matter. So this is a misconception, right? That like no language means I'm seeing things in the raw. No, all experience is conditioned with or whether there's language explicitly or not. So you have to nevertheless, so it's insufficient basically.
Can I actually say something on this? This is a question I've actually had for a while. Because it seems when you're giving instruction, a lot of it is about turning inwards.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed happen for me more and more, and I don't know if this is correct, but I want to share it, is if I kind of focus and it feels like leaning into things, but not conceptualizing, the sense of a me can dissolve into things, and I just see things seemingly without concept. Like the mind goes blank and still, and it feels like I've almost merged in with everything. But it's through this more like leaning forward versus pulling back.
Well, see, look, so leaning forward and pulling back are both, they're just metaphors, right? The point is you're looking for I. So, you can have the kind of various kinds of, I believe various kinds of merging or melting kinds of experiences, but that's not really the point either way, right? So the point is not the melting experience, the merging experience. The point is, where am I? That's the question.
Because I was going to say, it takes they both seem to take me to a similar point of surrender. When I'm surrendering, it seems to take me to the same place.
I mean, that's good. I mean, but see, so but you should just know, right? That's fine. I mean, so if that helps you quiet your mind effectively and surrender, then that's great. But you shouldn't confuse the fact that it's helping you surrender with the truth per se, which is because in surrender, again, one is trying to continue to ignore, right? And so even that, exactly, that's right. And in inquiry, you would say, again, who's having this experience? Who's having this experience of seeming to melt into or merge into things, etc., right?
So Akilesh, I had a question again pertaining to the technique again, just to clarification about technique of self-inquiry.
Please.
So yesterday you cautioned against languaging such as resting in the being or turning your mind towards the self. You tend to objectify that. Yet when I practice self-inquiry, I feel a certain presence. And I try to rest, I end up resting in that presence with silence. So it's sort of almost like a void, but it is a felt presence.
Yeah.
So am I objectifying it there, or should I be renewing the question at that point, or can I just rest in that silence? And until I come out of silence, can I just rest there?
So
is that
so I'll tell you what. So I mean, there's a couple things I want to say about this. One is, so technically speaking, right, it most certainly is a feeling. Okay, it's a feeling, it's an object, and ideally one should keep questioning because when you're not good, that is, like you said, layam, it's a sort of quietness of mind that is nevertheless a subtle thought, basically, because again, the test for it, whether something is a thought or not, does it come and go? When I say thought, I mean it's been very broad. I mean experience. I mean an object. These are all the same thing. So it wasn't there before. Now I'm experiencing it. 2 seconds from now, I won't experience it. Therefore, it's a thought. So it's definitely a thought. And technically speaking, one should continue it. And frankly, I know it's a pleasant experience. It's an experience of peace. My usual thing that I would say is, if you want to prolong that experience of peace, the best way to do it is to continue the inquiry. Because if you stop the inquiry and rest there, what you're doing is you're effectively relaxing your vigilance. And that means that basically you're opening your mind for the attachments to take control again, and you're going to fall out of the state. Whereas if you keep vigilantly guarding the state by inquiring, who's experiencing this, you'll actually tend to stay there longer. Now, that said, however, I will say, everyone's different again, and for some people it can be helpful to stay in that state if that's what they can do, basically, and it does quiet the mind, and so it's not wrong exactly. I don't say it's wrong precisely, but it's not the self, and we want to keep pushing, ideally at some point, further.
He said that I had the same question a few years ago. He said that you have to keep working it.
Yeah.
You're at a stagnant stage, you cannot leave it like that. But in Ramana's teachings, it says that you have to wait until the self pulls you in.
Yeah.
When do you know when to poke and when to wait?
You should keep poking until you can't poke anymore. It's very simple. I mean, in my opinion, so basically, see, when the self pulls you in, you won't be able to poke.
Okay.
Yeah, it's simple as that, right? The ability to poke will be taken from you. Even if it's a glimpse, usually, I'll say, even for glimpses, even for samadhi experiences, one should continue to ask who is experiencing it. But the reality is, very often in those experiences, you won't have that ability.
So dissecting every single thought and to.
You want to come to who's again, where are you? Because it's a very simple question. Where are you in this picture, right? Until that answer to that is dead clear, right? You have to keep poking because you haven't gotten the answer. It's really quite simple as that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here in my case, I don't feel like I've arrived at the self or something like here. I do have a vigilance in terms of guarding that state of any thought comes to push it off and stay there. So there's that thing about anything comes to perturb that, so I'm guarding that.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Except that it's done in this presence.
So I mean, so that might be more.
Surrender.
Yeah, it might be more surrender kind of thing. There's a certain quietness. Yes. So if there's a quietness and you're vigilantly guarding it, and you're guarding, and you're
That's
and are you relaxing effort also?
I'm relaxing anything other than guarding that.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Other than guarding the sound, so that's a surrender practice then. Yeah,
Because it falls into surrender. And
Yeah.
It starts off as self-inquiry and then it seems to fall.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, see, basically, because how is it that one guards the silence is the question, right? The
Yeah.
only way that one guards the silence is by continuing to ignore all the objective particularities. That's right.
And where does one rest when one does that? Nowhere.
Exactly. You move towards that because you see. So I mean,
You can rest.
right. That motion is the rest, basically. The vigilance, the rest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to add that really resonates with me because if I'm in a state of stillness, which I know is an object, to then start inquiring feels like I have to invoke a little sense of doership.
Yeah.
But if I just pay attention, ignore. It's very light comes.
Yeah. Sure. As long as you can keep awake, that's the point, right?
Yeah.
So that's the point, right? You don't want to fall asleep, quote unquote, into the world.
Yeah.
If you can keep awake, that's the key point. Keep awake and uninvolved and unperturbed, then you're doing surrender perfectly.
So when you're experiencing, I know saying you experiencing is tricky, but because you're saying that you can't have objective, as if there's an objective thought, there's the one who knows it and there's duality. But you have cognitions of house and people and teaching.
Right. So you asked me this question yesterday, more or less, and I gave the same answer, which is, it depends. It'd be very easy for me to say yes. Sure, I have cognitions, and Ramana said the same thing. But technically speaking, right? If one were to, the real answer is, if you were to ask me what's my experience, then the only real answer would be I'd have to say, well, who am I? And
it's your experience.
Yes, who is the I that's being referred to? And when one investigates I in that case, the mind essentially goes to a point where it can't speak anymore. See, it paralyzes the machinery. If you look in that spot where the mind begins, the mind effectively can't operate in the usual way. So yeah. there's no answer to this question, really. See, the question is based on the wrong premise.
Yeah.
If one is assuming that there's such a thing as experience, see, experience only, this goes to your earlier point, Raj, about words, right? Experience only exists in the world which is conditioned by the egoic split. Only when you have this initial split can you say there's such a thing called experience. If that initial split is questioned, then you're exiting language, you're exiting concept, and then nothing more can be said.
Mhm.
So if you really ask me, do I have experience? It's an unanswerable question. It's, are we even having this conversation? This is a good question. I mean, I'm not saying no.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that these questions are posed at a level which, technically speaking, is wrong, is based on a wrong assumption. So it's we're operating within a discourse which is wrong.
Yeah. Could I just add?
Yeah.
So in Vedanta, they talk about the empirical transactional world and
Yeah.
the absolute view.
Yeah.
And I guess from the absolute or Brahman's perspective, so to speak, there's no thing but itself.
Exactly.
Happening. But then for someone who has properly realized that, such as yourself, there's, I guess there can be an acknowledgement of the empirical reality, but it is just, there's the caveat that it's the empirical, not the, well, I'm trying to work it out.
Well, yes. No, see, you can't solve the puzzle fully with words, because the whole point is that there's a section of things that is not coverable by words. So, it's like this, right? From the empirical perspective, from the transactional perspective, there's multiple perspectives, including the spiritual perspective and the non-spiritual perspective. But from the spiritual perspective, there's no perspectives at all.
Yeah.
Not even the spiritual perspective. So this is the conflict we're dealing with. So it doesn't have to be fully resolved in words. It cannot be fully resolved in words. All the words can do is just help us, bring us to that point from which the beyond words can be grasped. It's very strange.
The need for me to try and land on it, because I can see I'm doing it, is itself an attachment.
Yes, of course. The mind wants to understand. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, this is the quest for liberation, after all, right? So the quest for liberation is the mind desiring truth, and that's required. The mind must. We want that. We want the mind to struggle and strive and desperately want the truth. That's a good thing. And in the end, that will lead it to where it needs to go. Now, it will get it and it will not get it. What happens is impossible to say precisely, but that is what, after all, inquiry is, right? Inquiry is the mind trying to say, where am I located? It's trying to locate itself. Now we know, logically speaking, if we just follow the Vedantic text, of course, the self cannot be located. But nevertheless, this activity of trying to locate oneself is valuable, because it leads the mind to destroy the attachments, and then one comes upon a reflection of the self, basically. So, yes, the mind cannot get exactly what it wants, but nevertheless, it will be given what it needs, through the process of looking. So it is an attachment.
It's
but
form of control, I can feel it.
Yeah. The desire to know is a form of desire for control, absolutely. But it's not a bad thing if it's directed in this way, So find it, satisfaction is there of a sort. So, if you want to see, look.
The satisfaction won't come in an answer, it will come in the end of needing an answer.
Well, it will come in the experience that goes beyond words, basically, essentially. I mean, again, it's ironic, right? It's beyond words, not the same as anti-words, right? Like I'm doing nothing but talking, right? The scriptures also talk. They say Brahman cannot be described. These are words though. Brahman cannot be described. It's just been described as that which cannot be described. You know, Brahman is Satchidananda, right? Being, awareness, bliss. But it also says Brahman cannot be described. So which is true? Cannot be described, or is it being, awareness, and bliss? You know, it's point because these things cannot be, because it's not exactly falling into these categories. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the real point. It cannot be described as uncategorizable. It cannot be described as categorizable. You just can't get your hands on it. But nevertheless, the attempt to get your hands on it is valuable because that attempt for truth, you know, if you direct these tendencies to the truth, even though you might know it's not exactly going to be precisely what I thought, because it can't be. It can't be what you think it is. If it were, then it would be another thought.
Yeah.
You know, but nevertheless, looking for it in that way, it's the only way the mind can proceed. And it's necessary that it do it that way.
It's described as a
So yeah.
million suns brightness. You cannot even describe one sun's brightness.
Exactly.
Yeah. Koti Surya.
Exactly.
So like, so every thought has that aspect of awareness
Yes.
inside.
Yes.
So every thought has to be dissected, or it can let.
Well, you have to
it let go.
look, just look directly if you can, rather than going thought by thought. Just go directly to I. You know, I've given this metaphor before, probably like last year, the year before, right? But again, it's a lot like looking in a mirror, right? And I say, you know, if you look at the mirror, what if I want you to ask? Well, what if I want you to pay attention to the mirror's surface? The mirror's surface, right? The mirror reflects a lot of objects. Every object in the mirror partakes of the mirror's surface, but you don't need to go object by object.
Yeah.
I just look at the mirror's surface. Then, if you look at the mirror's surface, what happens to the objects? They blur.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can't focus simultaneously on the objects in the mirror and the surface. The eyes don't work that way. So you attempt to keep focusing on the surface, and the objects blur and blur and blur.
So some thoughts are not fed, like not dissected. They may come back again and again, right?
See, when you say dissect, I mean, it depends what you mean by that. I mean, so
dissect means this is not that. That's not I'm not that. I'm not that. And
Sure.
Then say that okay, that's coming from. It's not coming from me. It's coming from deep inside.
Yeah, you can definitely.
Then like dissect to do that, right?
Yes.
And then you really completely eradicate that thought.
If you feel that's if you feel that's useful, please do it. Definitely.
And not useful. What I'm saying, you just
you don't need to do it thought by thought. But
yeah.
if there is a thought that keeps recurring to you, and you know it can be helpful to you to tell yourself like, yes, this is not me. You know, then that is something you should do, definitely. And again, of course, I'll also note again, right? Many of these thoughts will recur because they have psychological roots. So then those have to be dealt with separately.
Yeah.
You know, because that's unfortunately the case. There are a lot of these things which have emotional roots in the past and all that, and no amount of spiritual talking to yourself will do enough for them. You know, that's often the case. It's something to keep in mind. If there is attachment that keeps arising and the practice doesn't seem to touch it, it's because it has deep emotional roots, basically, and it has to be dealt with probably through therapy. I mean, maybe there are some other ways, but that's the main one I would think of.
No, but some thoughts which you didn't even think that you really that impression is there. So that impression has to be completely like if several years ago something happened, or you didn't even think that I remember that, but those kind of things come.
Yeah.
So that means it's still in your system.
Yeah.
So just to take it out, and or not to have going forward any impression, such impression.
That's something that
Yeah, you can just focus on I.
Yeah.
And when those thoughts come up, you keep just focusing like a laser beam on I. That they will automatically, if there aren't deep psychological roots, those thoughts will be eaten up by the practice of looking for I automatically. They will arise, but you're not giving them any importance because you keep looking for who is the one.
Yeah, we are not thinking about anything at all. Most of the time, no thought, nothing. Okay, but sometimes like which you didn't even think that you had thought like that many years ago.
Sure.
That might come.
Yeah.
So you got to attend to it and eradicate, or it also will disappear in the
practice of looking for I is an eradication mechanism by itself. You don't need to go thought by thought. When you're focused on where am I, as these thoughts arise, you're still continuously focused on I.
Correct. Yeah.
That process is already having an impact on
Very better. That's all I mean.
Yeah. It's already weakening them automatically because these thoughts are rising and they're not being fed.
Yeah.
See, when you are not doing the practice, you're identified with some constellation of stuff that reinforces whatever thoughts are coming up.
Yeah.
But when one is focused on going inward through surrender or inquiry, whatever thoughts arise are not being identified with. When thought arises and it's not identified with, it loses some of its impact.
Yeah.
So that's automatic. You can also, if you want, go through a process, if it helps you, of telling yourself like this is illusion, I'm not this, and all of that. But just realize looking for I itself weakens these thoughts as they arise.
Yeah, they all become very peripheral view kind of a thing.
Exactly. So the attachments are automatically being weakened automatically. All right. Well, last question. Go ahead. Go for it.
Just a clarification on what Gita was saying. So if you have some emotions that you're not fully processed, that's why it keeps coming back.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Anger, judgment, jealousy, whatever those emotions might be. So what you're saying is just inquiring into who's having this, will that process it, or is there anything else that's happening?
Well, therapy.
That's when you're saying therapy.
Yes. See, I mean, basically, yes. Inquiry itself weakens these thoughts. It definitely does. But you'll see, right? If the roots of these problems are quite deep, then they'll disrupt inquiry sufficiently. At that point, and you will be able to come back to it. That's what you'll see, right? You'll see something's bothering you so much that it disrupts the practice, and you can't go back to the practice easily. And you're like, that means that's an indicator that there's a psychological issue that needs to be dealt with. But generally speaking, yes, technically speaking, if you can more or less keep up the practice, then jealousy, etc., these things will be weakened in the process.
So just a clarification.
Yeah.
These are not issues that I'm facing.
Sure.
For me, if anything, it is judgment.
Okay.
Like jumping to judgment about things and people. So that's the problem that I face. It's not anger, jealousy. I don't have any of them. I just use that as an example. But for me, it's more judging.
Sure. Yeah. So if you're focused on who am I, essentially, right? When these judgments occur, or these thoughts of prior judgments or whatever it is come up, right? Again, you're not identifying with them, and so they will lose some of their power. Effectively, what's happening, right, is the person who is getting gratification or whatever it is from the judgment, you're just not you're not identifying with them as much, right? Every time the identification with that person is weakening, So and you're enjoying the peace of the inquiry, because the inquiry will bring a certain peace to it with it. So so the attachment to inner peace increases, and the attachment to outer forms of gratification will decrease.
So is it true for physical pain? Sometimes too much physical pain.
Yeah, of course.
Then only the pain predominates.
See, again, physical pain. I mean, the Buddha said basically, of even the physical suffering, right? He says the actual pain sensation is one part of the pain. 9/10 of the pain is mental. So the identification, and really what that really means is the fantasies that come with it, basically, right? Imagination. I'm going to suffer so much more. It's going to become worse. All those worries. So that's the vast majority of the physical suffering is that. So when you do the practice, again, those are all weakened. All right. Well, let's conclude today. I think we should conclude because we're pretty much over time at this point. But let's keep our questions for this evening or tomorrow morning. We'll continue this discussion for sure. And yeah, I would encourage all of you, keep the practice going as much as you can today, and then you can discuss later today or tomorrow. So we'll be meeting this evening at 7 o'clock. Raj Usha's house. Okay, perfect. And I look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you very much.
Thank
Namaste.
you. Namaste.
Could I give you a number? Like extension that
You saw